Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the Week 8 Monday Night Football Showdown slate on Draftkings. Going to talk through this Week 8 game between the Buccaneers and the Giants on Monday night. Going to look at the Showdown slate, start off at the top of the player pool and work our way down. Like we always do, we'll go through and talk through all the playable options, all the guys that I'll be considering for my lineups, the guys that are actually going to be on the field that we want to consider rostering. We'll do that, and then towards the end of the video, we'll take a look at roster construction as well. We'll talk through different lineup builds, how I'm looking to build out my lineups, who I'm looking to play at captain, whether I, want to pay up, whether I think there's some cheap options at captain. I'll be sure to touch on that as well. But before we do get started with the video, as always, guys, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button down below. If you are new to the channel here, be sure to hit that subscribe button as well. I do make Showdown videos for every Monday night and Thursday night game, getting out a ton of NFL content throughout the week. I still make videos for the main slate as well, so I would appreciate it if you would subscribe, and be sure to click that notification bell as well, so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do really enjoy these videos and if they help you out a lot, and you want to get more content from me, you can see all that I do have to offer over on Patreon. That is linked down below in the description. You can check out the Patreon and see all that I do have to offer over there if that does interest you. But let's go ahead and take a look at this slate. We will start off at the top of the player pool. Tom Brady, our most expensive option. He is $12K as a flex play, and then if you're looking to play him at captain, he is $18K. So just talking about Brady, Brady is obviously, he's in play here. He's expensive for sure. I think he's a little bit overpriced, to be quite honest. Brady has had two really big ceiling games this year. I think, kind of some outlier games where he had 36 and 39 Draftkings points. Last week against the Raiders, had 369 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. Also had a quarterback sneak at the goal line, got a rushing touchdown, which almost put him at 40 fantasy points. And then week 4 against the Chargers, had 369 yards and 5 touchdowns. Brady has shown a ceiling this year, but I think, that's a little bit of an outlier. I think most weeks, Brady's going to project for like low 20s in fantasy points. I think, paying $12K for him, it's a little bit expensive. I don't think I'm going to be playing Brady at captain. I don't see any way I want to go to him at captain. I just don't know if he has the upside. If Brady goes for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, he might be a guy you need at captain, but it depends on if, who those touchdowns are going to. Like, let's say Mike Evans, has 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, then you're probably going to want Mike Evans in that situation. Rarely do I play quarterbacks at captain, and I don't think this is going to be a slate where I try and pay up for Brady at captain. Now, as a flex play, Brady is still a really good option. He's still probably the highest projected player on the slate overall. It's just at $12K. I don't think I can see myself, or $18K, I should say, at $18K. I don't see myself paying up for him at captain. But obviously, it all comes down to roster construction. If I'm playing a Tampa Bay pass catcher at captain, like a Mike Evans or a Scotty Miller, like if I'm playing one of those guys at captain, then I do want to get Brady in those lineups, because if I'm assuming that Mike Evans has a big game or Scotty Miller has a big game, it's obviously going to be because Brady is getting them the ball. And, if Mike Evans has 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, it's going to be Brady also has 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So between the two quarterbacks, Brady's obviously more expensive. Do want to talk about Daniel Jones. He's $9,200. He's much more affordable. Daniel Jones, though, he's been pretty bad this season. He's had 2 decent games. Last week against the Eagles, 22 DK points, and then week 1 against the Steelers had 19 DK points. Other than that, he's been really, really bad this year. Even in some good matchups, like against Dallas, he had 9 fantasy points. Like even against Washington, just 14 fantasy points. I mean, this is a brutal spot for him against the Bucs. The Bucs have been a team, in the past that we've targeted against them through the air. Like they've definitely been a team it would be really hard to run on the Bucs, but they were a team you could attack through the air. Well, so far this season, they've just been an all-around elite defense. I mean, the Bucs have looked like one of the best defensive teams this year. It's a brutal spot for Daniel Jones, but he's $9,200. He's still a quarterback, which means like he's going to be involved on every offensive play. I mean, the game script's going to be very favorable. You would most likely expect that the Giants are going to be trailing in this game and going to have to throw. We're probably going to have to see Daniel Jones throw the ball 35, 40 times possibly. At $9,200, I don't think I'm going to play him at captain, but I do like Daniel Jones quite a bit as a flex play. I still think, he probably projects a little bit higher than like Ronald Jones and Scotty Miller. So if I can find the salary to get up to Daniel Jones over those guys, I do actually like Daniel Jones here. Even if he has a bad game, he's still probably giving you like 13 or 14 fantasy points, which, could be more than you get from Jones or Miller or really any of those guys priced around him. So between the two quarterbacks, I like both. I think given the savings, if I can only play one, I'd actually probably play Daniel Jones. It's going to be tough to pay up for Brady unless, like if you're correlating your lineups correctly, then obviously you want to get Brady in there. But just talking about Brady overall, like he's just not going to be one of the first guys I put in my lineups. I think if I can only choose one of the two quarterbacks, I'd rather save the salary, play Daniel Jones, maybe hope he gets like some garbage time touchdowns or something. Because I could see a scenario where Jones outscores Brady. I mean, Tom Brady's still a great quarterback, but for fantasy, these 35, close to 40-point games that he's been putting up recently, I think are, definitely outlier performances. But then looking at the other, pass catchers at the top, Mike Evans you got for $10,800. I like Mike Evans a lot here. It's hard not to like him. Chris Godwin is out for this game, and we've had a scenario so far this season, I believe 3 games Chris Godwin has missed. Chris Godwin was out week 2 against Carolina. Mike Evans had 7 catches, 104 yards and a touchdown, 26 DraftKings points. He was out week 4 against the Chargers. Mike Evans had 7 catches, 122 yards and a touchdown. And then he was out week 5 against the Bears. Mike Evans had 5, 41 and a touchdown, 15 DK points. So in the 3 games that Godwin has missed, Evans has 26, 28, and 15 DraftKings points. Pretty much his best 3 games this year have all been with Chris Godwin out. So it's clear that when Godwin is out, Evans benefits to no surprise. At $10,800, Evans is also expensive, but he's definitely a guy I would rather pay up for a captain over Brady. I think Evans gives you, that 25, 30-point upside. We've seen Brady go for 35, close to 40 some of these last few games, but I'm not really, buying into that. I don't really want to, play a quarterback assuming he's going to put up 35 to 40 because that's just a little bit of an outlier. Whereas Mike Evans can easily put up, 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. He might see some shadow coverage from James Bradbury, and Bradbury has been really good this season. But Evans is just such a big body. He's a pretty hard guy to guard one-on-one. Brady seems to always look to him, especially with no Godwin. I expect Evans to see plenty of targets. I think Evans is one of the better pay-up options overall. Like in terms of captain plays, I do like him if I am paying up at captain. But then you got like Ronald Jones, Scotty Miller, Gronk. We'll talk about these guys in the mid-range. So Ronald Jones, he's $8,800. He's pretty expensive, and, between him and Leonard Fournette, at least last week, it was pretty much like a 50-50 split in terms of touches and snaps played. I think Leonard Fournette actually out-snapped him. I think Fournette played on 55% of the snaps, and Jones was on 45%. Jones got 14 touches, and then if we look at Leonard Fournette, last week Leonard Fournette got 17 touches. He was really involved in the passing game. Between the two running backs, I would definitely rather play Leonard Fournette just because he's, way cheaper. I think it's going to be a 50-50 split most weeks. We could honestly see like a hot hand scenario, whereas, if one guy's struggling and the other guy's playing well, the other guy could definitely get more touches. I think most weeks, like I said, it's going to be a 50-50 split. Choosing between these two guys is going to be pretty tough. Ronald Jones is still the starter. He's still the number one guy technically, but Fournette is going to be involved. Fournette gets looks in the passing game as well. He got 7 targets last week. If they were priced similarly, I would probably rather prefer Ronald Jones, but because Fournette is $6,200, if I'm going to play one of the 2 Tampa Bay running backs, I do prefer Leonard Fournette. I don't really see a scenario where I would play both guys, just because I think that's really, you're really kind of killing your upside in that case. I don't think we see a scenario where both those guys put up like big games unless, Brady just has 0 passing touchdowns. Like the only way that Ronald Jones and Fournette are both having, big games is if Tampa Bay's just scoring rushing touchdowns, like say they get down to the red zone and they're just, Ronald Jones get 2 rushing touchdowns and Leonard Fournette get 2 rushing touchdowns. That's really the only scenario I would see, but that's very unlikely to happen. So I probably would not play both guys together. And like I said, if I can only choose one, I do prefer to go to Leonard Fournette. Scotty Miller does see a big boost with Chris Godwin out. Going to be on the field way more. Pretty much going to be like an every down player. Last week without Godwin, or Godwin did play last week, I believe, but he got hurt late in the game, if I'm not mistaken. I know Godwin played, but I'm pretty sure he got injured later on in the game. Maybe not. He did get 9 targets, but Scotty Miller did have a good game last week, even with Godwin, playing. I think Godwin did get hurt though towards the end. But we've seen, so far this season. So we've had 3 games without Godwin. Week 2 against Carolina, Scotty Miller didn't really do anything, just 3 DraftKings points, 2 catches for 11 yards. Week 4 against the Chargers, though, he did have a really big game with Godwin out. 5 catches, 83 yards and a touchdown, 19 DraftKings points. And then week 5 against the Bears, he went catchless, Didn't get targeted at all. I think he might have got injured in that game, but I'm not exactly sure. But he still is going to be, the wide receiver 2 with Godwin out. He's going to be on the field a ton. He's going to run routes. He's 8,600, so I think that's probably a little bit too much in my opinion. But Miller's not out of play. Like, he's not a guy that I would fade. But, if I'm just choosing between guys in that price range, like, honestly, like I said earlier, I'd rather play Daniel Jones. I'd probably rather play Gronk as well. I think Gronk, his touchdown upside right now is pretty high. They are looking to him a lot in the red zone. He's got 8 targets both their last 2 games. He's scored a touchdown as well in both their last 2 games. He's kind of looked like his old self. They've been involving him more in the passing game. Without Godwin, you would expect Gronk to see a few more targets. I have interest in Gronk at 8K. Between Gronk or Scotty Miller, I'd probably rather play Gronk. But, I think all these guys, Ronald Jones, Miller, Gronk, I think all 3 are a little bit overpriced in my opinion. Like, I know Daniel Jones has been really bad, but I still think Daniel Jones projects better than those guys. I think his floor is much higher just because he's a quarterback. His ceiling, I don't know what Daniel Jones' ceiling really is at this point, but I think he's going to see a lot of garbage time. I think he's going to have to throw the ball a ton. So that's just really my thoughts there between those 4K or those 4 mid-range guys from Daniel Jones down to Gronk. Daniel Jones is definitely my favorite. I think Gronk and Scotty Miller do benefit without Chris Godwin, but I think both are a little bit more expensive, a little bit more than I would like to pay. Ronald Jones, because he's in a 50-50 split with Leonard Fournette, I would just rather play Leonard Fournette, who, is over $2,000 cheaper. The Buccaneers defense, it's a great spot. Daniel Jones has been turning the ball over a ton. He's been taking a ton of sacks. He's been throwing a lot of picks. I think he's thrown a pick in every game except one. It's a great spot for the Bucs defense, but for $7,400, I don't really see a way I pay that much for a defense. There's just no way I'm going to pay that much for a defense on a showdown slate because defense is just so high variance. The Bucs could get 2 pick sixes and score 25 points. They could get maybe 2 sacks, give up 2 touchdowns, and score 4 points. I'm not going to pay $7,400 for a defense that could score anywhere from 25 to 2 points. Just really not worth it. I'd much rather play some receivers. Like Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, I have interest in, mainly due to the fact that I just expect the Giants to be throwing a ton. It's not really a good matchup. Tampa Bay's defense has been elite all around. They've got some really good corners that have been playing really well this year. Between Slayton or Shepard, if I could only pick one, I'd probably rather play Sterling Shepard. I just feel like his target floor is a little bit higher. He's only played 3 games this season. He's kind of been off and on with injuries. When he's been healthy, he's been solid. Week 1 against Pittsburgh, 6 catches, 47 yards on 6 targets. Week 2 against the Bears, 2 catches, 29 yards on 4 targets. And then last week against Philly, had his best game, 6 catches, 59 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets. Between Shepard or Slayton, I think I do prefer to go to Sterling Shepard. Both guys are definitely in play, though. Leonard Fournette, we talked about, I actually like quite a bit. I like him over Ronald Jones. If there's going to be a 50-50 split between the two in terms of touches, I would just rather play the guy that's almost $3,000 cheaper. So I like Fournette a lot at $6,200. Evan Ingram for $5,800. His price tag is definitely appealing. He's someone that I've played a lot this year when he's been on the main slate. He's had some really good matchups, and he just hasn't done anything. Against Dallas, against Washington. I didn't really do anything those weeks. He did get kind of robbed of a touchdown in that Dallas game, had a touchdown get called off, but I thought coming into the year that Evan Ingram was going to be a monster. He was just going to see a ton of volume, was going to finish the year as probably a top 5, maybe top 10 tight end. And, it's just not going to happen. I mean, I don't know what's going on, but he just hasn't done anything this season. He's still getting good volume. He got 9 targets last week. He got 10 targets week 4 against the Rams. You would think with how bad this Giants team is and with how much, they're usually playing from behind. I mean, they're pretty much playing from behind every week. You would think Evan Ingram would be just a total beast and just be out there dominating late in games, getting garbage time, just racking up those fantasy points. But that just hasn't been the case this year. His best game of the season was week 2 against the Bears, where he had 6 catches for 65 yards. I still like Evan Ingram because I think the targets are going to be there most weeks. He's only $5,800. He is pretty affordable. He's definitely a guy I would consider a value on this showdown slate. Usually $6K and below is what I consider value. So I would consider Evan Ingram a pretty good value play. I think he's still going to see pretty good volume, anywhere from 6 to 8 targets. The Giants are going to be playing from behind. They're going to have to throw. I do like Evan Ingram quite a bit. Between him or Shepard, Shepard's definitely safer. So if you can find the $800 to get up to Shepard, you could do that. But I like both guys as value. Wayne Gallman I actually have interest in. I expect the Giants to be throwing a lot in this game, But Wayne Gallman is very involved in the passing game. He saw 5 targets last week, 5 catches on for 20 yards. He's going to be their starter here. Devontae Freeman has already been ruled out, so it's pretty much just going to be like Wayne Gallman and Dion Lewis splitting the touches. I assume Wayne Gallman sees a good majority. I think it's going to be probably like a 65-35 split, maybe 70-30 between Gallman and Lewis. Both guys can catch passes, but Gallman's going to be the starter, should get the most touches. For 5,200, I think if they get down to the goal line, Wayne Gallman's probably the guy that's punching it in. I think he does have a lot of touchdown upside if they can get down to the goal line. He's going to be involved in the passing game. If they get down, if they're trailing, if they're down 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns late in the game, it's not like Wayne Gallman's coming off the field. Like, he's going to be out there. He can catch passes. At 5,200, I actually like him quite a bit. I think he's another pretty good value play. I wish he was a little bit cheaper, but we don't really have a ton of value that I'm in love with. So Ingram, Gallman, 2 guys I consider pretty solid values. Tyler Johnson, I think, is a little bit too expensive. He's been playing more. He's pretty much surpassed Justin Watson as the number 3 receiver. He's going to be the number 3 receiver with Godwin out. Normally he would be the number 4. At 4,800, though, I'm not going to play Tyler Johnson at this price. I'd rather play Wayne Gallman for a little bit more. I'd rather play Evan Ingram for 1,000 more. I think Johnson is just a little bit too expensive for me. The kickers, they're fine to go to. I normally would only play one. Rarely do I play both kickers. Golden Tate, 3K. He is really, really cheap and is someone I do consider another decent value play. He's been pretty inconsistent this season. His best game came last week against Philly, and he literally caught 1 pass. It was a 39-yard touchdown. That's the only catch that he had last week that put him to 10.9 DK points. He's been another huge disappointment this year. Golden Tate actually showed some upside last season, but this year he has done literally nothing. He's still going to get probably 5, 6, 7 targets. He's going to be on the field. He's still the number 3 receiver. Going to play on when there's their 3 wide receiver sets. He's going to be their slot receiver pretty much. You expect the Giants to be playing from behind. Like I said, I think we're going to have to see them throw the ball a lot late in the game. At 3K, if I have to choose one of the 2 kickers or Golden Tate, I think I'd honestly rather play Golden Tate just because I think he gives you legit 15, 20-point upside. He could go 5 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown. I wouldn't be surprised. These Giants receivers, I still think they're so, it's going to be so hard to predict which one of these guys does well on a given week. Most weeks, none of them are going to do well because the Giants are just so bad. But let's say the Giants put up 21 points tonight. Let's say they score 3 touchdowns. I could see a scenario where maybe Evan Ingram catches 1, Golden Tate catches 1, maybe Wayne Gallman runs 1 in. It's just so hard to predict between, all the Giants receivers. Tate is really, really cheap. He's only 3K. I actually like him quite a bit as a value play. He is definitely someone I'm going to be taking a shot on here. I would rather play him over the kickers. I think he gives you more upside than the kickers. Definitely would rather play him over the Giants defense as well. There's really no one under Golden Tate I'm going to be considering. I don't really want to play the Giants defense even though they're cheap. I just don't see the upside. Cameron Braid's just not playing enough. I don't want to go to him. Dion Lewis you could maybe consider, but even if the Giants get behind and they're forced to throw, they're going to have Wayne Gallman out there because Wayne Gallman can catch passes. I don't see a scenario where Dion Lewis is a guy I really want to roster. And LaShawn McCoy, he's pretty much not involved anymore. It's pretty much a 50-50 split between Ronald Jones and Fournette. So I would say the cheapest player I like on this Showdown slate is Golden Tate at 3K. Really don't see myself playing anyone else below Golden Tate. I think we touched on the player pool, talked about all the guys I have interest in, all the playable options. Let's take a look at roster construction real quick. Talk about how I'm looking to build out my lineups. We'll definitely do one lineup maybe where we pay up at captain and then one lineup where we go a little bit cheaper at captain. So I think if I am paying up, Mike Evans is probably my favorite pay up option at the captain position just because I think he has the most upside. I think if there's one guy that can go for 30 Draftkings points here, it's definitely Mike Evans. If there's one guy that could go for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, it's him. So I like Evans if I'm paying up a captain. If I am playing Evans and I'm assuming he has a big game, that's going to mean that Brady's getting him the ball, scoring those touchdowns. So I do want to correlate my lineups the right way. Play Brady with Evans. Once you do that, you're paying for pretty much the 2 most expensive guys, so you're definitely going to have to find some value. I think this is where Golden Tate comes into play. 3K, I do like him as a value option. We also have Evan Ingram, Wayne Gallman, 2 guys I like for value. We'll definitely probably get one of the 2 in there. I think Gallman's just going to be so involved. I think he's probably going to see 12 to 15 carries, maybe 5 to 7 targets. He feels pretty safe. even though it's a brutal matchup, like I just think he's going to be so involved. So at 5,200, I do like Wayne Gallman as a value. Once we plug him in, we got 6,800 left for our last two spots, 6,800 remaining per player for our last two spots. So let's see what we could do here with these last two. So if we played Evan Ingram, that would leave us enough to play. That would leave us enough to play the Bucs D, which I don't really want to do. But we could play Sterling Shepard or Darius Slayton. You know, you got 4 Giants pass catchers in there, or like 4 Giants without Daniel Jones. I don't think we'd be able to get Daniel Jones in here. If we did play Jones, that would only leave us 4,400. Well, yeah, we actually could do that. We'd have to play one of the 2 kickers. But like I said earlier, I'm fine playing one of the 2 kickers. But choosing between the 2, I would say probably the Giants. Like Graham Gano is probably the guy I prefer, because I think the Giants are probably going to be less efficient in the red zone. Like they're probably going to be kicking more field goals, whereas the Bucs, I expect if the Bucs get down to the red zone, they're going to be scoring touchdowns. Like, extra points don't really help your kickers. Field goals are what, like if a kicker is going to put up like a 20-point game, it's going to be because he makes, 4 field goals or 5 field goals. It's not going to be because extra points. Like extra points only give you 1 point, I'm pretty sure. So I could see a scenario where the Giants get down to the red zone a few times and can't convert. They have to kick a field goal. So we'll just plug in Graham Gano into that build. So that's a build I do like with Mike Evans at captain. It's pretty tough to pay up for Evans at captain because, if you do that and you play Brady with him, I mean, you're pretty thin on salary. You're going to be forced to go cheap, but, there are some cheap options I don't mind, like Golden Tate. I'm fine taking a shot on him. You have the kickers, one of the 2 kickers you could play, like always. But let's take a look at maybe a cheaper captain. If we don't want to pay up, maybe a guy like in the mid-range or for cheap that I think has upside. Leonard Fournette, I think, is someone that does have some upside in the mid-range. I could see a scenario where if the Bucs get a big lead and they're running the ball late, like I don't think they're just going to be hammering it with Ronald Jones. I think Jones will get some carries and they'll mix in Fournette. I mean, like the touchdowns, I think the touchdowns are going to be so important between these 2 guys. Like whichever guy gets the goal line carries is going to be what, puts them over the top. It's going to be hard predicting if that happens. Like I could see a scenario where, the Bucs, maybe they have the ball like at the 50-yard line and Ronald Jones breaks off like a 20-yard run, breaks off like a 25-yard run. They get down to the 5 and then he has to come out because he's tired and Fournette gets the goal line touchdown. Like it's just so hard predicting between these 2 guys. I think Fournette gives us upside though, and he's really cheap. He's definitely more affordable than Ronald Jones. We can play him at captain at 9,300. Normally, if I am playing a running back at captain, I usually don't look to go and play the quarterback. Like I don't go out of my way to play the quarterback with them unless the running back, can catch passes and has the chance to get receiving touchdowns. Fournette, we did see get 7 targets last week. He's not an elite pass catcher. Like he's not an Alvin Kamara that can get 10 targets, but I wouldn't mind playing Brady with Fournette at captain. I mean, Brady still projects as one of the highest his projection is still probably the highest out of anyone. So we could plug in Brady and probably Daniel Jones. Like we could probably get both quarterbacks into this build. We did save a lot of salary. Going Fournette at captain saves us a lot of salary. So we might be able to get Mike Evans as well. Just kind of go like all stars in this lineup. Probably going to have to play like Golden Tate at 3K. If we do that, leaves us enough to play Wayne Gallman. We'd be 100 short of Evan Ingram, but we can still play Wayne Gallman. So that's another lineup that I actually like quite a bit. Pretty much the same as the last lineup, except you're playing Leonard Fournette at captain instead of Leonard Fournette at captain with Mike Evans in the flex. You're playing Mike Evans at captain with, I can't remember who was in the last lineup at the flex. Honestly, I kind of forgot the kicker. So that's just like a 2v2. Would you rather play Fournette at captain with Evans in the flex or Evans at captain with a kicker in the flex? Honestly, Fournette at captain with Evans probably gives you more upside because, Fournette does have 20-point upside, especially if he gets some good touchdown variants, if the touchdowns go his way. Like we saw week 2 against Carolina, got 2 touchdowns that week. I think Ronald Jones also scored in that game. I mean, you could see a scenario where they get down to the goal line and, Fournette just gets the goal line touchdowns. Like some weeks it's going to be Ronald Jones getting the goal line touchdowns. Some weeks it's going to be Fournette. Predicting which one does, it's going to be so hard. It's going to be a coin flip. Like I said earlier, because Fournette is so much cheaper, I would rather play him over Ronald Jones. So I do like him as sort of like a mid-range kind of cheaper captain play that's going to allow you to, really jam in all the studs, both quarterbacks, get in Mike Evans as well. I don't know if there's really any like punt captains though. Like maybe Evan Ingram you could use for captain, maybe Wayne Gallman, maybe Golden Tate, but that's probably really, really thin. I guess if there was one cheap guy I would play at captain, it would be Wayne Gallman, because I could see a scenario where he just gets like 20 touches. I don't think he's going to be very efficient, but he's going to get a ton of volume, and he's pretty cheap. If we were playing him at captain, kind of the same thing. You could really just jam in all the studs, get in both quarterbacks with Mike Evans. Still leaves you 5,100 remaining per player. So if you wanted to go really cheap with Golden Tate in that last spot, that would leave you enough to get in, like Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, one of those two guys, or Fournette as well. You could also, do maybe like Evan Ingram, and then that would leave you enough to play one of the two kickers. But, that's probably it. Let me see. I don't think there's really anything else that I could do. Like I said earlier, I don't really want to play anyone below Golden Tate. Like, Tate's the cheapest guy that I have interest in. So, yeah, if you plug Tate in there, that'd leave you enough for either Slayton, Shepard, or Fournette. You could choose between the three. If I had to rank those three, I'd probably rank them in opposite order. Fournette number 1, Shepard 2, Slayton 3. But all three guys are fine. You have 3 Giants, two Bucks. So if it makes you feel better, you could go with like a 3-3 build. I know people they like to do the 3-3. They like having, even amounts of players on each side. Normally I don't really, go out of my way to make certain stacks, but this is a game where I think having more Bucks is probably the right move, because the Giants, I could see a scenario where the Giants, maybe the final score is like 28-21. I could see a scenario where the Bucks just absolutely whoop them and it's like 28-7 and the Giants just struggle all night to do anything offensively. I normally play multiple lineups on these Showdown slates, so I'll probably have probably like a Bucks onslaught lineup, maybe have a lineup where I play a few more Giants, probably have like a 3-3 lineup. I'm definitely going to have like a 5-1 Bucks lineup where I just have a lot of Bucks, just kind of hoping that maybe the Giants just can't really do anything offensively. Maybe like just play Wayne Gallman in that lineup and really load up on all the Bucks players, because right now, the Bucks, they're huge favorites. They're favored by 13. They're going to probably run away with this. I would probably build out a few lineups at least like that, where you kind of really, really loading up on all the Bucks players, making that Bucks onslaught. Still don't see myself paying $7,400 for the Bucks defense, but I'll definitely have some 4-2 Bucks lineups, some 5-1 Bucks lineups. But yeah, guys, I think we broke everything down for this Showdown slate. Talked about the player pool from top to bottom, hit on roster construction as well, hit on a few lineup builds that I like. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it did help. If you enjoyed, hit that like button before you do get out of here. Hit the subscribe button as well. Be sure to click that notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload and you'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do really enjoy these videos and if they help you out a lot and you want to get more content from me, you can check out all that I do have available on Patreon, all the content I have to offer over there. If it does interest you, the Patreon is linked down below in the description. You can check that out if you're interested. But best of luck tonight, guys. Thank you so much for watching the video. Hope you win some money. We'll see you in the next one, guys. Good luck tonight. Peace.